Good morning and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Speeding Up the Pace of Innovation session here at Frontiers. Now, every organization that is tuning into this session ultimately has an online presence and a need to effectively bring your products and services to market in a secure, scalable, and accelerated manner. Now, what about incidents when they occur or even before they arise? How do you ensure that any incidents are addressed and resolved quickly, and that ultimately translates into you providing the best customer experience possible? Hi, I'm Ryan Garcia, Customer Success Manager here at Slack, and I have the honor of introducing our guest speaker today, Jamie Newham of Hsbc, who is joining us remotely from London. Jamie, to kick things off, maybe if you could just please introduce yourself, share a little bit about Hsbc and your role and responsibility there.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Thanks, Brian, first of all. So yeah, as mentioned, I'm Jamie, coming from London, working for HSBC. So I'm sure many of you already know the name and the brand of HSBC, but if not, to put in a little bit of a frame, we are one of the largest global banks with over about 200,000 staff, multi-millions of customers completely across pretty much every country in the world. So with that and that amount of customer interaction and products, obviously comes technology, which is kind of where I sit. So within the bank itself, we have different areas, different sections, but I specifically focus on what is called collaboration tools or collaboration technology. And as part of that is Slack. So recently we've been going through quite a big digital transformation, changing the ways of working. And obviously Slack was quite a big part of that. So I look after a team predominantly actually based in London, but we have a couple around the world as well who helps manage, support, scale and roll out Slack internally to HSBC's numerous staff. So at the moment we have about 12,000 active users and hitting up nearly 500,000 messages sent each day on the platform.
Cool. Thank you very much for that. So for the agenda today, we're going to spend about the next 15 to 20 minutes hearing from Jamie around how HSBC has incorporated Slack into basically two critical areas. The first is going to be the software development lifecycle, and the other is the incident management processes. Of course, we're going to dig in a little bit with Jamie and hear how the value that Slack has provided to their organization and any best practices or tips that he can share with all of us today. And then, of course, at the end, we're going to save about 5 to 10 minutes for some live Q&A. So if you have any questions throughout, feel free to post those and we will address at the end. So Jamie, to kick things off, again, you shared some really interesting use cases a couple of weeks back. When you look at these different dimensions around how you're incorporating Slack, for about how long would you say that you've been using Slack for these processes at HSBC?
So Slack has been around for about 2 years in HSBC. The growth has been very, very strong. And to be honest, it's changed quite a lot how we've worked, how we've especially around software lifecycle, how we've kind of developed as an organization, and also how the teams have worked and interacted together. So just to kind of give a bit of insight, previously, if we look at software development lifecycle, we would have been a bit more disconnected. There would regularly be breakdowns between development teams or delivery teams and also senior management, for example. So that visibility really wasn't there. We struggled a lot with speed to get things through the process quickly enough and ultimately make decisions and collaborate across the wider areas of the bank, to be honest. So we had things like Microsoft Teams, which has now been used, MS Projects. But really, we've now bring things together into Slack. So we're using Jira. We're also using Jenkins and Git to bring that development lifecycle into there.
Very cool. And just to dig in a little bit now with the existing process with Slack, how would you describe, when you compare the before scenario and some of the challenges that you've begun speaking to already, how would you describe the impact that Slack has actually had on this process when you think about the end-to-end dynamic? And are there any key takeaways or tips that you would share with our audience?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the main things is that we've managed to be able to deliver things quicker and actually more customer features through. And Slack has played a huge part in that. And we've actually shipped around 2 to 3 times more customer features over the 2 years that Slack's been in the bank than we had previously. So that speed is definitely one thing, bringing everybody together to a kind of cohesive pane, so we can all the right decisions can be made at the right time. So that's been a huge success. And I think one of the big takeaways I think that we've learned is to really kind of embed the foundations of the functionality within the platform, to really adopt channels, even as basic as it sounds, to make sure that the thing they're set up correctly. Teams have their own specific channels and spaces where they can talk and manage specific topics, which has been really helpful. So that's been a massive thing. So I think, as silly as it sounds, there's loads of functionality within Slack, but perhaps start a bit small and don't try and do everything on day one, because that's really been helpful to kind of chip away and increase the functionalities as we go and build more and more things in with the platform over the 2-year period.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And again, as the title of the session implies, this idea of speeding up the pace of innovation, it sounds like as it relates to this particular process, Slack has been key to literally accelerate your ability to sort of deliver these features to market, and therefore allowing you sort of that competitive edge.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't really agree more, to be honest. It's definitely put us through the processes quicker, and also made us change a bit more how we work from perhaps more classic waterfall processes, quite linear, to being able to speed up and work in a much more agile fashion. So yes, absolutely.
Cool. Thank you for that. Now, maybe we could switch gears and dig into the second use case that you mentioned, which was around incident management. Now, you shared a couple of really great examples around how you're using Slack for 2 different areas. One is the alerting and monitoring process, and the other is just general communication when an incident occurs. Again, could you kind of talk us through, what did that look like before Slack? What were some of the challenges? And then ultimately moving to Slack, kind of what are some of the benefits or productivity gains that you've seen as a result?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So incident manager is something that we've worked a lot on recently. So it's kind of front of mind. So yeah, there's no real better way to say it. Previously, it could have been quite disruptive, quite difficult to manage. Quite slow and heavily manual process, relying a lot on email, a lot on sharing communications through that way, which are very difficult to track, and a real kind of breakdown between service desks and incidents and the end customers of how they would first of all understand what's going on, be alerted of outages or things like that, but also being involved in that process to get things back to production. So that's changed drastically over the last few years for sure. So now we have a much more integrated suite. We're utilizing things like App Dynamics and X Matters to pull alerts directly into Slack channels. So instead of engineers having to rely on email, they're getting CPU usages or API calls and all alerts directly to them within Slack, so they can jump on and address incidents much quicker. And of course, that's also teamed up with likes of war rooms and communication channels, so we can actually deliver this information straight to the end users, the customers. So that kind of full 360 visibility is definitely increased significantly. One of the main benefits of that is we've definitely seen a huge drop in duplications of incidents. One of the platform teams seen about 80% drop in duplications, purely due to the communication and being able to share this with the customers. So I guess to put it simply, it's really helped a lot, and gets us back to production much quicker and in a much smoother process.
That's awesome. Thank you for diving into that. And again, here at Slack, of course, we always talk about the value of channels is ultimately having the right people, the right processes, all focused and organized in one place. And then, to your point, it sounds like in addition to sort of accelerating the resolution around these incidents, it also helps sort of break down some of the internal silos where different teams might be operating, in Jira in different places. So that's absolutely awesome. Maybe we can shift gears to the last use case that you had spoken to us about as well, which is the use of Slack for blockers and escalations from Jira. Could you talk to us a little bit about a before and after view of what that looked like?
Yeah, so that's something that's a bit newer, something that we've more recently put in. And actually, we've leveraged one of the new features, Workflow Builder, for that, which has been actually really, really helpful. And you should definitely try it if you haven't. Sometimes some of these features get a little bit overlooked because there's so many in the Slack platform that you can avoid them. But it's been really helpful. So we've set up several workflows in different channels, whether it's for a leadership channel, it's even such things as we even have one for recruitment, which helps us go through there. But the main thing is on services and feature requests and escalating them up through the hierarchy. So we allow now the customers who raise a request to also request an increase in priority, for example, and then the workflow builder can follow through and send that to the right person directly within Slack, so they can make a quick decision. See who it is, take it up against the priority, and process that through much more smoothly, rather than relying historically on either just within Jira within the tickets or with an email escalation, which is very difficult to track the visibility across that. So that's been really useful.
Cool. And I love that you're incorporating Workflow Builder into this process. There's a lot of people out there that are probably familiar with Workflow Builder, some are not, but for those that are not familiar with it, it's basically a quick and easy native tool or feature capability within Slack, does not require any coding, and it literally allows you to automate routine processes to sort of accelerate efficiencies. So it sounds like, Jamie, to your point, this has been something that just even the simplicity of incorporating Workflow Builder into this dynamic has really created a little bit of a sort of consistent and efficient dynamic within these processes, right?
Yeah, so I think the main thing is exactly what you've just hit on, Ryan, is the actual simplicity of using it. It is what's really helped, is that you don't need to know how to code. You don't need to be that technical to really set it up. So empowering the users themselves to also do that. So yeah, sure, we have quite a lot of bots and other things that the development teams perhaps can build, but we also want to be able to incorporate other use cases and other, I guess, less technical members of staff who are just as need the information just as much and also want to have the features and functionalities. So yeah, the simplicity of that kind of code-free environment that it gives has really enabled us to use it much quicker. Quite simply with just a few basic training videos that we've published through Slack, and we saw the uplift go from there.
That's awesome. And ultimately, that's our goal here at Slack, is to make the capabilities accessible to everybody and ultimately help everybody with your work. So I do want to save time for some Q&A. So I just had 3 closing questions before we open it up for some live Q&A. Again, if you have questions today, please feel free to post those and we will address. But Jamie, for you, the last 3 questions I have really are, reflecting back on the 3 different use cases that you've highlighted so far. Mm-hmm. If you had to summarize the overall business impact that Slack has had at Hsbc, how would you describe the value that Slack has provided across these different dimensions?
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, it's helped in so many ways. It's quite difficult to I guess summarize it to one or 2 points. I think the first thing I'd like to say, and the big takeaway for us is that kind of, and I've mentioned it already, is that speed that we can get out of Slack, and not just speed of communication as well. So obviously that's brilliant, getting information straight to the right people, the developers, the product owners, the product managers, etc., all within the same space and same page. But also the speed and ability to scale it and to also to roll it out to wider areas of the bank, and also adopting more features and functionalities in apps. So the speed has really helped us a lot. Another great thing, and I think something that can be regularly overlooked, especially in an industry such as finance, is a kind of a bit of a culture change that Slack has helped promote, I would say, breaking down those silos and really opening up the communication to everybody. There'll be teams that will have previously never have even known each other existed within the bank, purely due to the size, and opening that up and really taking forward to adopt the agile methodologies and sharing of information. I think has been a huge thing, but speed has been great for sure.
Yeah, very cool. So last question here for our audiences. It sounds like some of these processes are a little bit newer at HSBC. When you look forward into the future, love to just hear your feedback for a second around, what's next for Slack at HSBC, and are there any final takeaways or key advice that you would share with our audience today if they want to incorporate Slack into their own processes to accelerate innovation?
Yeah, for sure. I think if I look back, kind of a bit of hindsight, what perhaps we would have changed or what things we would have done differently, because we definitely made mistakes, quite a few, for sure. Is kind of pick your wins and take them when you have them, for sure, right? There's so many use cases, or there's so many processes that you could change or you could improve on, right? There's hundreds of them. And if I look back now, I would have picked perhaps 2 or 3 very specific ones and really try and hone in and change those. And rather than, let's say, oh, here's 50 apps, or here's this many bots, or there's all these features and functionalities, but bringing it together in a bit more cohesive way. Kind of getting a bit more engagement from the teams as well, directly up front, rather than a kind of a bit of a classic kind of top-down rollout, bringing it a bit more through to the teams to help them design these 1 or 2 specific processes that you might want to do. So we did that much more with the incident management piece, which has been much more recent, and it's been much more successful than others. So take your wins as you get them, chip away, I think, is definitely the way to go.
Very cool. Yeah, thank you for that. And that's a great reminder for everybody. It's just start out slow, prioritize, baby steps of sorts, and make sure that we're really optimizing one thing at a time. Looking forward, what's next?
Yeah, very good question. So we've got quite a few things on the radar. We really want to again improve the incident management and get it fully mobile now, especially with people working from home. We don't want the necessity for people to be kind of glued to the laptop if they're in the incident management process. So Slack's on mobiles now at the bank, similar with X Matters and App Dynamics. So bringing that to a full mobile incident management process will be brilliant. So that's kind of one of the next things on the radar. And also we have quite big plans for an internal kind of app or bot marketplace that effectively. I'm sure there's other people out there who are working quite highly regulated areas or with a lot of governance and restrictions. So we're planning to develop our own internal kind of hosting platform to give that back to the developers here to make it really easy for them to create new things, create bots, create ideas, and push them through to improve the flexibility that they can have, rather than limiting them to perhaps off-the-shelf ones or other third parties that we have contracts and negotiations with. So really, really opening that up, I think, is to be the next 2 big things we're looking at.
Awesome. Well, Jamie, these are awesome stories, and thank you very much for sharing your insights. I do want to pause now and open it up for live Q&A. So again, thank you for painting this picture today. This has been fantastic. And I will take the first question or 2 that I see here in the chat area. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you. Thanks, Ryan.